Good afternoon. Welcome to the General Assembly of the Romanian Football Federation. I will ask you now to hold a moment of silence for those who are no longer among us. Now I'd like to pass the floor to the General Secretary of the Romanian Football Federation in order to find that the meeting is properly organized and also to designate the three persons who will be drafting the report on our General Assembly meeting. Good afternoon. Out of a total of 283 members, we have 218 members present today. Mr. President, the General Assembly of the Romanian Football Federation is lawfully assembled. In order to determine the scrutinizers, in order to count the votes, I would like to propose the following members. From LPF Târgu Mureș, from the central area, from AJF care aș veni, for the right side, from Selena Constanța, a representative. Now I would like to ask you to vote for the scrutinizers, for the evaluators of the vote. Who is voting for, who is not casting any vote, and who is against? Unanimously, the vote evaluators have been designated. In order to verify the report, the final report of the General Assembly, our proposals are Mr. Luminare Marian, Mr. Bărbăcioru Ioan from FC Fair Play, Mr. Constantin Giurescu from Sport Team. I'd like you to cast a vote on the designation of the three nominated persons. Who is casting a vote for these persons, who is not casting any vote, and who is against? Unanimously, the proposals have approved. The persons who will verify and check the final report of this meeting. Now I'd like to ask those who have been designated to verify and check the final report to stay on your places, and that by the end of this meeting, please come forward to the panel so that we can comply with the rules for social distancing. Dear President, please take the floor. Thank you. Taking into account the restrictions on international travel, Mr. Alexander Ceferin, the president of UEFA, was not able to be here together with us, but he passed on a video message.
Dear Razvan, dear members of the Romanian football community, dear friends. I would like to greet everybody and also apologize for not being able to be with you. The situation still leaves me with no other choice than to address you through this recorded message. Nevertheless, I'm sure that very soon we will finally be able to talk face to face again. We are living a truly unique and unprecedented times. And although they brought so many obstacles with it, I try to view them as challenges and as an opportunity to build a better future together. Despite all odds, the 2019-2020 Champions League, Women's Champions League, Europa League and Youth League were finished. UEFA, like no other sports organization in the world, managed the exploit of holding 4 top-flight international competitions in 4 different countries, all at the same time, in such a difficult context and under such constraints, and all without incident and without having jeopardized the health of any of those taking part, which was our overriding concern, of what we can all be very proud. Romanian Football Federation can be proud because regardless of a very complicated situation, it managed not only to restart but also to finish domestic competitions. It was your decisions, your contributions, your quick reactions and flexibility, your ideas and your trust in the UEFA administration that all made a huge difference and enabled us to meet what many people thought was an impossible challenge. With that said, I have to thank Romanian Football Federation and Razvan personally, not only for your excellent work and effort, but also for your constant support. The Federation strategically invests in the football infrastructure. Therefore, the most recent successes of your under-21 football team are no coincidence. The situation is still not exactly back to normal yet, but I think we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel now. I'm also convinced that football had and still has a great role in reinstating hope and confidence in people's lives. Even if matches could not be played in front of the full stadiums, fans of the whole world found their source of optimism and enjoyment in front of the screens. They could see that we never give up. Football is one. In Europe, it is a fabulous pyramid with grassroots as a foundation and Champions League as the tip. Fans from the whole world love domestic leagues with all its history and historic local rivalries. Next year, we have an incredible Euro ahead of us. Your national team still has an opportunity to qualify through the Euro playoffs. I wish you best of luck. You also started the Nations League cycle really well. So, dear friends, football is an amazing source of strength for all. Our next challenge is to bring the most important part of our game, the fans, back into the stadiums. But we will succeed in doing so, and that soon this complicated situation will be only a vague memory for us. I'm eager to start another season. The difficulties of the moment give me additional motivation, and I'm sure this is the case for all of you. We are also getting ready to read another chapter of the European club competitions, with the new Europa Conference League offering more clubs the chance to compete at continental level. Dear Razvan, dear friends, all the best in the future. I sincerely hope our collaboration will stay as great as it already is, and a successful and productive General Assembly today. All the best to all of you and good luck.
Good afternoon again and welcome to the General Assembly of the Romanian Football Federation for 2020. This is a pleasure to see you again after a long period of time when we didn't have the opportunity to see each other face to face, as we managed to do, as we are managing to do this today. Now, fortunately, we have been able to use the new technologies. Otherwise, we have not been using it. But this is the way how we have become a lot more closer, let's say, to these new technologies, in order to stay in contact. I'm very glad that we can see each other face to face, as I was saying earlier, actually inside the National Arena, the biggest stadium in Romania, the biggest football stadium. This is the first General Assembly organized by the Romanian Football Federation on a stadium, the biggest in the country, where any player would be dreaming to reach the highest sports performance. I hope that during the next period we'll be able to see each other healthy back at your home, in your hometowns, as we have been used to do, myself, my colleagues, and my colleagues from the administrative side, and my colleagues from the technical side, who will be introducing the future technical strategy that we are working inside the Federation. We have to admit that this is a period which generates a lot of uncertainty for all of us. What we are planning today might be denied even by tomorrow due to the developments in the pandemic of COVID-19 and the decisions taken by the Romanian state. Apparently we are still in a very difficult period for all of us. It's obvious that the difficult days are not over yet. This is why the message that I'm passing on is that we still need to be cautious and to pay a lot of attention. Nevertheless, we learn how to adapt ourselves to this situation. And we can say that together we have managed to take the best decisions so that we can resume our activity even to a partial level. We were the only field of sport which actually finalized the previous season, while playing on the field, on the football field. For sure, this is the biggest crisis that football has been confronting since the World War II. Never in our history, and we should underline this, has never been blocked altogether for almost 3 months. There are leagues who have not been organizing games for more than 7 months, unfortunately. But as a result of this crisis, we were all able to witness the fact that football is more than a mere sport. Football is more than the most beautiful sport in the world. And the force that we can provide, the team of the national federation, the force that you represent here, can go beyond any challenge that we might be confronted during this crisis situation. We were able to prove together that in such difficult times we become better together, as this is the message of our logo. We proved that football is a team work, and we were able to demonstrate that we can leave aside personal interests, the interests of a county association or of a club. Of course, this could become a motivating force to support resuming competition. In such moments, no club or no county association finds itself in a more powerful position in order to be able to provide proper answers to such a crisis. And this is the reality which underlines the fact that the clubs and the associations, no matter where they come from Romania, from the western side of Europe, or from any other place of the world, the goal is to finalize the financial year without losses as much as possible. This situation means that most of the time we do not have financial reserves in the clubs. For sure, risk management will become a far more present concept in our action during the next years. Fortunately, our federation has had a good situation from the financial point of view, financial stability, as a result of the vision that we have been imposing at national level since 2014, and based on this concept, 20% of the federation budget is set aside as financial reserves for the next year, and also as a result of a very good reputation that we have among the business environment, because we remain the most relevant federation in Romania which is not benefiting from public funds, but of course we are gaining access to European funds. Another important aspect in this financial stability of the federation is represented by an increase of the revenues from TV rights for national teams, for the youth team as well as for the national team. And this is why today, as I have mentioned in so many video conferences that we have had together, that the activity of the national team, the organization of competitions, the subsidies received, the investments in infrastructure or hosting international competitions are not threatened whatsoever. Now this is the time when the decision makers should take a good look at how football looks at the inferior league situation, the juniors and children teams level, because they need equal attention and support. We need to make them become aware of the fact that grassroots football is paramount for the future of football in our country, and these players need assistance and support more than ever from all authorities. If we take a look on the situation as that was a few months ago, we took upon ourselves this role to work as a team. The Federation has been acting from the very first moments of the pandemic. On 9th of March, as a result of the fact that the school activities will be suspended, the Federation decided to interrupt all junior and children competition. Also, all foreign travels of the teams have been cancelled, and also the representative actions to be organized in country or abroad, such as friendly games or presence in various training tournaments. At the international level, we were among the first football federations which took a swift reaction, even before the decisions imposed by the authorities. On 12th of March, taking into this, having in view the increase of the epidemiologic danger posed by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and taking into consideration the decision taken by the National Committee for Emergencies, the Romanian Federation decided to interrupt to suspend all football competitions at masculine, feminine level, as well as futsal competitions organized in Romania. Even if teams could have taken place behind closed gates, the Federation deemed this to be a high risk in terms of travel of teams and of the staff involved in organizing football competition. The moment when we decided to interrupt the competitions, such a decision had been taken in only two other countries, in Spain and Italy, countries that had been far more severe affected than Romania at that moment. The decision was also contested, but only for a couple of hours. But later on, we all agreed that that was the best decision that could be taken, because we were able to eliminate any cases of potential infections at the very beginning of the crisis, and this would have jeopardized any proposal from our side in terms of resuming the competitions. Throughout all this pandemic period, the Romanian Football Federation demonstrated that even under extreme conditions, in crisis situations, wishes and is able to act as a national leader, not only through the perspective of TV audience that is able to gather, or the spectators, or the number of sportsmen and women involved, but also by being able to identify the most appropriate solutions in crisis situations. The Romanian Federation was recognized from the very beginning as a knowledge provider by the Ministry of Youth and Sports and by the Ministry of Health, as we were involved in designing the protocols in order to resume sports competition. Throughout all this time, myself and my colleagues have had a number of meetings with the representatives of central authorities, and we found ourselves in the situation where we were able to propose the general methodology for sports activities in Romania throughout the pandemic situation. We contributed to applying the sanitary restriction policies, and we obtained for our field, for the football field, the maximum that could be achieved given the need for safety. Also, the medical board of the Romanian Federation was involved in designing all medical protocols for sports activities in Romania, not only for the football side. Either we talk about resuming trainings, reopening the sports facilities, or resuming the competitions. Also, we came up with nutrition recommendations for the players in order to reintegrate to this period of effort, and to how to prevent accidents after a long inactivity, and also with psychological recommendations in terms of what should happen after resuming the regular sports activity. The dialogue with the national activities continuing right now. We wish very much to bring spectators back on our stadiums, and we also have the example provided by the European Super Cup organized in Budapest a few days ago. The games without spectators, from our point of view, represent just an emergency situation, a short-time solution. This is not a viable solution for the future of football whatsoever. We would also like to have a protocol for the amateur football and for futsal as well, and this is why we should focus during the next period of time on this in this area. As regards the international football competition organized in Romania, we were able to obtain the required exemptions from the government in order to properly organize these competitions. This is why the sports delegations, the game officials, the sports the players summoned benefit from exemptions from the law on quarantine. Otherwise, we would have not been able to participate in international competitions at club level or at national team level. Also, we have had a steady dialogue with the Romanian embassies abroad and with the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to make sure, in order to make sure that our players can resume their work abroad without going through a period of quarantine or isolation, and we are grateful for all the support received during this period. The Romanian Football Federation also got involved in the decision taken at international level by having a steady dialogue with the UEFA and FIFA. A number of our proposals were approved by international bodies, such as increasing the period for transfers in order to encourage flow of financial resources inside football, not only inside or not only at national level but also at the international level. Also an extension of the deadlines for finalizing the domestic competitions, and which brought about this flexibility in terms of participation to European competitions as well. We were able to have an intervention in terms of flexibility in the licensing system, and we adopted yesterday in the executive board in terms of the monitoring and the financial fair play system that we are going to put in place. Also, another intervention was related to another achievement, namely the right to participate in the Olympic Games for our players who are could no longer be part of the U23 category. I'm talking about those who are born after the 1st of January 1997, as the Olympic Games have been postponed for the next summer. Lately, we have to admit that all this period has not been easy for us, for management bodies, or for you. But looking backwards, I strongly believe that we have taken the best decisions, the most appropriate decisions at that moment. However, the crisis is not over yet. The slogan "Better Together," that has been the guideline for us, for our activity throughout this period, will operate as such during the next months and during the next years. And I'd like you to thank you for all the support provided to the management of the Romanian Federation throughout all this time, because I think we were the sport field which provided the strongest message of solidarity among clubs, among players, among trainers, among referees, and this mattered. This was extremely important in resuming our competitions, and this matters the most, and you should be proud that we were able to achieve all this. We have had a steady dialogue with all of you. We managed to get involved whenever that was the case, and we will become involved in the future as well in any scenario where we can be of use. We have had the same objectives, and we have taken upon ourselves this responsibility, and I think you remember all the video conferences that we have had. First of all, health and safety of the players, the supporters, of the technical staff, and all those people involved in organizing any football game. Also, financial sustainability of the clubs, which was nevertheless equally important. A third objective, to produce the lowest level of injustice for all participating clubs. Our goal was to reach the lowest level of injustice. I know that we have not always had unanimous decisions, but we couldn't have such unanimous decisions during crisis situations. And the fourth objective, to preserve the specific nature of each league in a crisis situation. You have to understand very well how each league, each competition operates, which are the needs of each competition in order to take the best decisions for each competition separately. No decision could have been applied from from top to bottom. We had to adjust ourselves to the situation, and we'll need to do this in the future as well. But as mentioned earlier, I think together we were able to take the most appropriate decision for the future of the Romanian football, not only in the short run but also in the long term, because after 2 or 5 years we wish to stay together, and we want to have Romanian football continue developing itself. This is why the merits this is why we take the credits for the fact that we were able to open football competition by mid-July. In a crisis situation, the biggest mistake that a management body can make is to operate according to the same logic as the one before the crisis. For us, for the football competition, this would have entailed the fact that we can assume the fact that we will be observing, we will be finalizing according to the same competition format as the one before the pandemic. That would have been the biggest mistake of an organizer, without properly preparing all the operational scenarios. For example, for the Romanian Cup or second league competitions which are organized directly by the Romanian Football Federation, all possible scenarios have been produced. All scenarios that could have taken place if certain events would have taken place. All clubs have been properly informed from the beginning. I'd like to thank you. I know that some clubs might have been disadvantaged to some extent, but in the end we were able to take proper decisions for that league and for the Romanian football. For the second league, for example, we even had an innovative formula with a playoff system with only 5 stages instead of 14 stages, and halving the number of points. And for the inferior leagues, we had mini groups or direct qualification matches in order to finalize the previous season. We were able to finalize the elite league on the field in order to observe the deadline from UEFA, in order to have a team representing Romania in the youth league. Unfortunately, where the medical protocol could not be complied, the competition have been frozen. The third league, junior and children leagues, the feminine football and futsal competitions. For the 2021-2021 season, we were forced to find together new formats, competition formats for the first 3 leagues. We have been forced to make changes and innovate, but the impact of such changes on the competitions will be a beneficial one for the development of Romanian football. First league increased from 14 to 16 teams, and the playout will have an extra stake, as the winner of the playout will have the chance to reach the European Cups, European competitions. Also, we'll have 350 matches compared to 268 matches during the previous season. The playoff and the playout will be finalized at the same time. During the previous seasons, we had 10 stages in the playoff and 14 stages in playout. Also, we have a more dynamic playout by introducing an extra stake for the playout teams, by providing them with this chance to play a game for the last qualifiable place in the European Cups. All games will have a sports stake, and the uncertainty of the final result will increase, and this means that the level of interest will be increased. More teams in the first league means more opportunities for the players, for the trainers, for supporters, for the sponsors, and for the TV partners, which also entails an expansion of impact of professional football from the economic and social point of view, and this is a feature that we should not forget. Also, we'll be able to properly capitalize on the existing infrastructure or the future infrastructure that is being built or that we wish to have built. Also, we'll be able to contribute to increased TV audience. The playout during this with this format will definitely have an increased audience compared to the previous season. For the second league, we are using a more attractive format, play out and play, with more teams. Even if we haven't made intervention in terms of the number of matches. For the third league, we have more teams, a smaller number of teams, and shorter travel times. We needed this in order to be able to resume the competition. You have become part of all these decisions. You have participated to the decision process behind all this. And this is why I'd like to thank you once more for all the support provided to the Federation throughout this time. The Romanian Football Federation, through its members, was able to demonstrate throughout this crisis that we operate as a family, and in a family decisions are taken together, even if, as mentioned earlier, we have not always met a unanimous quorum. We were able to demonstrate that all of us who wish well for the Romanian football, we are able to take such decisions. We are working on a steady basis to fulfill our objective, and we are able to become and operate as a true force even during such conditions. However, we cannot state that this crisis is over. We should not cave in. We have this duty, we have this responsibility as persons deeply involved in football and decision make, and as we are taking decisions on behalf of other persons involved in football, to continue our effort with the same level of solidarity in good faith, and focusing on improving the situation of Romanian football, not only in the short run but also in the medium and long term, in order to mitigate the negative consequences of this phenomenon. All those involved in the football should continue contributing so that we can take upon ourselves these responsibilities for the most important social phenomenon in Romania, which is football today. Football provides major key benefits for the society overall, because we are not talking only about the game, but we are talking about instilling values, teamwork, healthy development, and personal fulfillment. And this is why we are responsible, all of us members of the General Assembly of the Romanian Football Federation are responsible for it. The football represents a vehicle also for educational and social development. Today, as I mentioned earlier, we are the most important social phenomenon in Romania. No less than 700,000 sports people are playing football in Romania, either at professional level or at grassroots level. Even those who are all the people who just want to kick a ball and play a game of football with their friends in the weekend in the mini football playing fields. More than 300,000 people of these 700,000 are practicing football on a regular basis in competition. This means that they are players who belong to a club, or they participate on a regular basis to football competitions. You have to understand that all the other sports in Romania bring together no more than 80,000 sports people. And to this outlook, I'd like to add one more thing. The position expressed by the Federation to support restarting the economy and way out of the social anxiety that we are living. Therefore, football has to operate with this goal of providing something back to society, even now, in these moments. For sure, the health of the supporters, of the trainers, of the players, of all members of the technical staff, of the referees, of course, should still represent our first priority. But at the same time, football managed during this crisis for the first time, to have this position as the most important social phenomenon in Romania. An estimated impact of football today, approximately 740 million euros, which are broken down as a direct contribution to local economy, 183 million euros, savings in the health system, 503 million euros, and social benefits, 53 million euros. Football has this added value of providing community values, and this is how we were able to contribute to exiting social anxiety, which was a result of all the restrictions, of all the background and the whole situation that we are confronted these days. As the competitions have been resumed, we were able to give back some access to normal life. This is now the moment when the supporters should come back on the stadiums, and all the football players, the grassroots level should come back to official competition. We are talking about 53 competitions organized by the Romanian Football Federation. When we are talking about the future of the international football, because we cannot take these things only at a national level, as you know very well, football represents an industry worldwide. When we are talking about the future of international level, we also have to consider all changes that might happen, so that we should be always ready. So this is why some wage caps, limits in terms of the number of foreign players, reducing number of transfers, limits, caps on expenses, investments in own football academia, are just a few regulations, just a number of examples of regulations that we should take into consideration in Romania, and for sure they will change how football looks at a worldwide level. These are not only possible measures, but measures that we are desirable in order to be able to survive in such a crisis. And I have to admit that this crisis have also provided a time to think, to reflect, time to reflect on the future of football, how we should reconsider this in terms of how football is structured, the way in which football is organized. For sure, an issue that we should not forget is that football has this mission of continuing to develop in a far more collaborative manner. This entails a reset for football at worldwide level, and there is no place for egotistic behavior on such background. In the end, I would like to assure you once more of the full support of the Romanian Football Federation throughout this crisis period, which is not yet over. You should count on us, as we are here to support you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of today's agenda. Please cast a vote. Who is for the agenda? Who abstains from the casting a vote? Who is against on casting the agenda for today? Unanimously, the agenda for today's meeting has been approved. I have been talking during my speech about the impact that the Romanian Federation activities have had. It was not easy for us, and I'd like to remind you that we are talking about 17 national teams that we have to manage, and no less than 53 competitions that we need to administer. This is why I'd like to invite the manager of the competition sector, Mr. Felix Grigore, so that he could introduce, so he could deliver a short report, so that he could have a short intervention on the impact that we have achieved during this crisis situation. Felix? Thank you, Mr. President of the Federation. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to see you again. I also like to thank you for the solidarity manifested throughout this period and the involvement that you have had in all important decisions that we have taken together. I will not have a long speech. I will just to mention a few issues. I'm sure that together we have been able to take the best decisions not to finalize all the previous competitions and to initiate new ones, and I will provide you with some arguments. You will see that during these difficult times, Romanian football has been developing, even if it has not been easy for us, as long as it has not been easy for you either. Since 2019, the Romanian Federation has been implementing the classification process based on quality standards for the academia, the clubs operating with children and juniors. The project has been designed with the support of the Dutch company NMC Bright, which has more than 15 years of experience in assessing, classifying and consultancy activity for European Academia. During the 2020 edition, a number of 69 clubs participating to the junior competitions have been classified as a result of their request. Out of these, 11 clubs represent premiers in terms of the classification system. Out of the 58 academia classified in 2009, who also asks for classification in 2020, only 13 were awarded a lower number of points compared to the previous year, while 45 were awarded a higher number of points. In practice, this translates into a percentage of 78% of the academia which were able to have a positive development from the quality point of view, which is extraordinary in our opinion. As a result of the decisions we have taken together, the number of teams throughout all football leagues has been increasing. Thus, in the first league we have 16 teams, in the second league we have 21, and in the third league we have 100 teams. What is also encouraging for the development of Romanian football is an increasing number of junior teams registered by the start of the 2020-2021 season. In terms of the under 16 and under 17, under 19 junior teams, we have 153 clubs, 17 more compared to the previous season. So this means an increase by 12% of the number of teams to be involved in junior competitions. Another element which is encouraging is the very high number of satellite teams for the third league. We have had 4 satellite teams, Astra Voluntar FCSB and Universitatea Craiova, and now we have 11. So we have 2 from the second league. Another increase was registered in terms of number of teams in the feminine football. The development of feminine football represents one of the strategic objectives of the Romanian Football Federation, starting from 3 leagues in 2014, 2 senior teams, 2 senior leagues, a super league, first league, and 1 junior league. Starting from 2020-2021 season, we have 7 competitions dedicated to feminine football, 3 senior leagues, league, first league, second league, third league, and 4 competitions for juniors, under 17, under 15, under 13, and under 11. Also, starting from the new season, we have a mandatory obligation for the first league masculine clubs also to register a feminine football team in the under 15 national championship. Even if they had the possibility to conclude a cooperation protocol with the existing feminine football teams, most of the clubs went for the option to establish their own teams. This is why, after centralizing all applications for registering to the 2020-2021 season, 144 teams representing 68 clubs will start these competitions, compared to 24 when at the start of the competition we only had 43 teams from 20 South clubs. Therefore, the number of teams feminine football teams has been increased with more than 200%. Concluding, I'd like to add one more thing. Football represents the environment where we were able to find each other and has been able to transform lives of each of us. We must continue to provide, to offer as much as possible to this sport, which has given us so many moments of joy and fulfillment. Thank you. President, thank you, Felix. Now I would like to subject to your approval the new members who will become a final, who will affiliate themselves to the Romanian Football Federation. You have them on the right side and the left side screens. Who is casting a vote of approval? Who is against? Unanimously, this proposal was approved. Next item on the agenda, disaffiliation of a number of members. You also have them presented here. You have, please cast the vote. Unanimously, this proposal was approved. Thank you. Now I would like to subject to your vote a list of, including the total number of affiliated members to the Romanian Federation of Football as a result of affiliations and disaffiliations of a number of sports structures. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, approval. Unanimous approval. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, a presentation of the report on the executive board and the management of the federation since the previous General Assembly. We'll have a short video material and then the report, of course. Thank you. You all know very well these activities because you have all contributed. I subject to your vote the approval of the activity report of the Executive Board and the management of the Romanian Football Federation throughout the period spent from the last General Assembly. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, this report was approved. For the next items, I will ask the Financial Manager of the Romanian Football Federation to join us in order to deliver the accounting balance sheet for 2019 for the presenting the balance sheet of the national company, Mogoș SL, and also of the balance sheet of the Foundation Football for Community, as well as the Foundation National Football Academy, Romanian Football Federation. And then we will have together with us one of the representatives of the audit board and also one of the representatives of the Deloitte company to introduce us to their conclusions. Adi, also good afternoon from my side as well. I will invite you to watch a video which will point out to the financial results of the Romanian Football Federation and of the affiliated structures to the Federation. Thank you for your attention. I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Florin Constantin, the President of the Audit Board, to provide us with a summary of the Audit Board for 2019. Good afternoon. My name is Florin Constantin. I represent the Audit Board, which is made up from Marin Tona, Miriam Plașca, and the undersigned. I will introduce you to a short summary of the Audit Board report without going into details, as the numbers have already been introduced to you by Mr. Mitrița. Our mandate operates as a result of the decision of the General Assembly and the statute of the Federation. The objective of our mission, audit mission, was to verify and verify financial records and present recommendations to the management of the Federation. I will introduce you to a number of elements of the balance sheet. I'm talking about debts and credits, short-term debts and assets, especially a comparison to the previous year. In 2019, by the end of 2019, the short-term credit was 21 million RON, 5 million less compared to 2018. In terms of short-term debts, 2019, this represented 13 million lei, approximately 1 million RON compared to 2018. If we are taking a look at the details in terms of the breakdown of short-term debts, we can see that the debts towards suppliers have been decreasing in 2019 compared to 2018 by 6 million lei, and we have an increase in terms of assurances cashed in from the second and third league clubs. As regards the loss and profit accounts, in 2018, Federation had total revenues approximately 100 million RON and expenses of approximately 84 million lei. This results in a profit of approximately 4.3 million RON. This results from the profit from economic activity, 4 million, and non-profit activities amounted to 0.3 million. A total in 2019, we have an increase in terms of own capital. By the end of 2019, we have an amount of 27.300 million RON. As regards the risks and recommendations, the key risks identified are associated with the effects of the pandemic situation on the financial performance of the Romanian Football Federation. COVID has been striking all sectors of activity, economic activity, including sports. Our recommendation would be to continue and expand the programs financed from UEFA and FIFA, incur expenses and implement projects as new sources of financing are identified, and also recovery of all the credits. That would be all in terms of the report from the audit board. Thank you. I would also like to thank you. Taking into account that starting from 2014, we very much have been focused on implementing good governance principles, and such of these principles entails the involvement of an external auditor, not any external auditor, but a Big Four company, and this was extremely important in terms of the level of transparency manifested at the level of the Romanian Football Federation since 2014 up to now, and this also entails a number of interventions associated with risk management. As mentioned a little bit earlier, no one knew that we would be facing such a crisis. Nevertheless, as a result of the financial resources, the financial reserves that we had from 2019, and we are working on this to set aside in 2020 as well as for the following years, we are prepared to face a second wave of the pandemic situation. Thank you. Good afternoon, and I'm glad to be here together with you. My name is Florian Sima, manager within the Deloitte company. I'm a part of the financial audit team for the Romanian Financial Federation for more than 3 years. I would briefly be introducing you to the conclusions resulted from our audit organized on the financial status on 31st of December 2019. These conclusions have also been inserted in our audit report, signed and issued on 21st of February 2020. As mentioned earlier, we have audited the financial records of the Romanian Romanian Football Federation by 31st of December 2019, and net assets, total own capital 27.3 million lei, and profit resulted from the financial year 4.26 million RON. In our opinion, except for the effects described in the section grounds for opinions with various reserves from our side, the financial situation reflects properly the current financial status of the Federation and the financial performance for the financial year concluded on 31st of December 2019 according to the provisions of the Romanian law in force. The two paragraphs from the grounds of our opinion issued are taken over from the audit report drafted for the financial year that was concluded 31st of December 2018. The issue of correlating revenues and expenses in relation to sports equipment procured from the sponsor, from the sports equipment sponsor. Our conclusion was that the revenues set up in advance 31st of October 2019, respectively 31st December 2019, should be increased by 1.3 million lei, and this profit has been reported to the profit reported should be decreased by 1.3 million, and the revenues for 2019 should be increased by 500 to 20,000. The second paragraph refers to a re-evaluation that the Federation has been performing on its building, on the fixed assets, and our opinion was that there was an over-evaluation of more than 1.1 million lei for these fixed assets. Our conclusion is that by 31st of December 2009, the reported profit and the fixed assets should be decreased by 1.79 million RON, and by 31st of December 2018, the fixed assets should be decreased accordingly with the same amount. This would be the main conclusions presented in our audit report. Thank you, and I wish you to have a nice day and a great deal of success in your activity. Thank you. In order to comply with the statutory procedure, we will subject to your vote each of the reports presented so far. Now I'd like to subject to your vote the balance sheet for accounting balance sheet for 2019 and the discharge of responsibilities for the executive board. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, this report was approved. Now I'd like to subject to a vote the activity report and the balance sheet for 2009 for the national company Mogoșoaia National Football Center, SRL. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, this report was approved. Now I would like to subject to your vote the activity report and the balance accounting balance sheet for the foundation Football for the Community established by the Romanian Football Federation. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, this report was approved. Now I'd like to subject to your vote the activity report and the balance, the accounting balance sheet for the Foundation National Football Academy. Please cast your vote. Thank you. Unanimously, this report was approved. And last vote to be cast, the report of the audit board for 2019. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, the report was approved. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite again the financial manager of the Romanian Football Federation to introduce us with the annual plan for activities and the budget for 2020. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the team of auditors for the activity undertaken throughout the past years, especially during this sensitive period in 2020. I'd also like to thank to the team of external auditors within Deloitte who have been working with our financial department in order to clarify any potential issues. As regards the budgeting process for 2020, as we are aware already, the objective of this budgeting process is not to achieve a certain financial result, a specific profit per se. The objective is to provide financial resources so that the Romanian Football Federation could implement its short-term and medium-term strategy. In practice, as Mr. Stoichița, this means let the money flow. As long as we are focusing on providing this financial resourcing, I consider that the financial function is properly operated. Of course, any budgeting process may end up in a deficit or a surplus, which will add up to the annual financial reserve that Răzvan was mentioning earlier. This financial reserve has been increasing lately. As you were able to see, in 2019 we had a surplus. This resulted in increased financial reserves. In 2020 we have included in our budget also a surplus amount, and this means in practice that our objective, our key objective is to provide financial resources. This has two components. One component is related to attracting new funds, and the second component is related to using these funds. Our preoccupation was to attract the funds required in order to implement our strategy, and of course we have been preoccupied with using as efficiently as possible these funds. In terms of revenues, these are the categories of revenues achieved, which are reported on an yearly basis. We have revenues from sponsorships, TV rights, our partners who are working with us on a yearly basis. In 2020, throughout this sensitive period, we were able to work together with our partners so that the contracts which are still being implemented have not been amended in terms of figures for 2020. The only changes that we had to negotiate with our partners were deadlines for payment, as some amounts that we were supposed to cash in earlier will be cashed in later on during this autumn. Nevertheless, in terms of the figures for 2020, we are still within the initial budget. In terms of TV rights, as you know, these are amounts already cashed in for the teams of the national team games. We have also included in our budget revenues from retail, selling sports equipment. Unfortunately, this amount will also be affected throughout this year due to the fact that the supporters cannot have access inside the stadiums. Also, in terms of ticket selling, of course, we had to diminish this amount to zero. As you know, we have a ban on entering the stadium, so we hope that this situation will change. We also have in our budget the FIFA and UEFA subsidies, which will be increased, will also receive support in terms of COVID interventions, related interventions. We have also included here fees, visas, and any financial revenues, any other financial revenues. As mentioned earlier, in terms of attracting revenues, we are within the initial budget. We also have this surplus of more than 400,000 euros. In terms of spending, our expenses chapter, I have to thank here our colleagues from the procurement department, the ones who are implementing our procurement procedures so that all our activities should take place in an efficient, highly effective manner and with reasonable costs without endangering the quality of this activity. So I'd like to thank once more the members of the procurement department. Here we have tried to provide the proper financial resources so that all national teams should undertake the activities according to the initial budget. The fact that in September the national team and the under-21 team resumed their activity has been done with some additional costs, because we had to take the under-21 team, as you know, we have to take them to Finland, to Malta, and this is why we needed some adjustments in terms of our budget. Nevertheless, these trips were properly organized according to the initial budget. In terms of the competitions, the current level of the budget reflects an annual budget, an annual figure reserved for all competitions as scheduled. Felix has been introducing them to you a little bit earlier. We are trying to, of course, to comply with these limits. If there are, of course, we have some competitions that have been cancelled, and there will be some savings, but we'll have some extra, we'll have some additional expenses associated with COVID testing. But the minimum surplus that we need to make sure that we have in place is this 446,000 euros. Other costs are the ones associated with the licensing activity, the Central Referee Committee. This amount also should have included the implementation of the VAR solution. As there have been discussions, we'll see what we can do in this respect. We'll be able to do in this respect during this year. In terms of the operational costs, we are trying to stabilize this figure around 5 million per year, maybe less. As you are aware, during the pandemic period, during March, April, May, June, we have introduced a number of cost reductions in terms of staff as well, staff associated expenses, so that figures for 2020 will look a little bit better in terms of expenses. Also, we are maintaining, we commit ourselves to this duty to continue investing in the infrastructure, improvement of the conditions provided in Mogoșoaia, in the center from Mogoșoaia or in Buftea, so that our national teams could work in the best conditions possible. Concluding, the budget surplus, 446,000 euros for 2020, should represent a minimum level, at least, in terms of financial results by the end of this year. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Adi. Now I'd like to ask you to cast a vote on the approval on the annual activity and the national and the budget for revenues and expenses in 2020. Please cast your vote. Unanimously, this activity plan and the associated budget have been approved. Thank you. As you have seen earlier, even if the financial losses as a result of the COVID crisis are around 1.8 million euros, because we have lost all revenues, almost all revenues from ticketing by the end of the year. These are the losses that have been forecast at the beginning of the year, around 1 million euros. We are talking about also about losses in Mogoșoaia and Buftea during the crisis, approximately 400,000 euros. We are talking about the costs associated with charter flights, approximately 100,000 euros, costs that were not included initially in the budget in terms of the youth team. Otherwise, they would have traveled by using regular line companies in the economy. And also the additional costs with covering COVID testing for the referees and for the delegates. All this add up to approximately 1.8 million euros revenues, additional expenses. However, from the very beginning, the budget was structured around an increased level of revenue. So even if we have these extra losses, we have an additional increase in terms of revenues. In 2021, you will see a new forecast on increased revenues at the federation level, because we commit ourselves to open new sources of federation for the federation, and hope that we'll be able to inform you on more on this when we see each other again at Cheile Grădiște, hopefully. Nevertheless, during the next minutes, you'll immediately see which is the level of financial support that was approved yesterday in the executive board, in order to cover the expenses for members of the federation associated with the COVID. And as we are the Romanian Football Federation, I think this is the time when we should talk more about the sports-based activity, things that were mentioned also in our activity report, but I would also like to relate to what we have been talking about during our past meetings. This is a traditional topic for our General Assembly during the winter. Most of the time we meet each other in Cheile Grădiște. And as a result of the message that I received from your behalf and on other occasions by phone, as I have been discussing most of you directly throughout this time, as well as during our video conferences, you will notice a new objective that we commit ourselves at the federation level, namely to develop a technical strategy that, besides launching the new football academy, National Football Academy, which will become the main supplier for training education in Romanian football, all these are elements of support in terms of achieving sports performance at the highest level possible. We all understand the flow, circuit of performance, namely that you cannot achieve results starting from yesterday and achieving them tomorrow. Since 2014, we established the starting points. If we wish to have performance in terms of our national team, we need to make an intervention starting from the kindergarten level. And this is the project which was initiated during the previous years. And this is a project that we wish to continue and to achieve even better results compared to those achieved in Iași and Buzău. Why am I stating this? When am I using this opportunity to introduce you to this subject? First of all, we are here on a football stadium, and by the end of the day, the fact that we are managers of the Romanian Football Federation, of the clubs or of football county associations, in the end, all of us, we are working on a football field. This is why, as members of a team, we need to produce results for teams and for football players. In order to produce football teams and players, besides the financial stability that we need to achieve for the federation, for our members, we also need to understand very well how this performance circuit operates. It starts from the very first moment when a child steps on a football field. Most of the time, they do not have this opportunity. They will have to start their activity in front of their home. And until the moment when they reach, they are able to get dressed in the most beautiful t-shirt, the t-shirt of the national team. This means that we need to specifically translate our integrated vision in terms of this technical strategy that we have been working on, and that we'll be introducing by the beginning of the next year. This system should take a good look at what investments in the grassroots football mean. All the competitions, as long as we organize, we didn't have proper rankings or proper competitions, that I think that would be that was the most difficult challenge, that we cannot have rankings up to the age of 12. We all have added 2 more competitions in the performance circuit. In under 17, the competition for junior women football players, and under in the elite league under 16. This is how we are able to build up new competitions for each category, for each age category. Those who are a little bit older, you remember very well how things looked before 89, and those who are younger know very well how things looked after 89. These new competitions are organized for each age category with the best format. Best competition format should represent the only solution that so that we can have best players in terms of national teams for women players or male players. If we take a look at this circuit, at this flow of performance, we can see that this intervention of the federation results in creating a new federation, a new team under 20, a new national team which was born in 2000, so that we can prepare the campaign that should be initiated in the autumn, in the fall of the next year. We should always come back to this flow of this organizational chart of performance. And where should we make our key interventions? These competitions represent the most important element. Our strategy. In 2014, we had only 21 competitions. Now we have 53 competitions that we are managing. In terms of the scouting, we didn't have anything in the scouting area. Now we are using objective filters, trials, selection campaigns that we organized in the country and abroad as well. Also in the urban and equally in the rural environment. And we had this objective from the very beginning, as 50% of the Romanians are living in the rural environment. As long as 70% of the football players are coming from the rural area, we had to provide a good opportunity to these children to play football. The same applies to the interventions we have organized throughout this time in terms of rules and regulations. First of all, in terms of quota of young players, that has been always adapted to the reality in the competition. In terms of the training, we have taken important, serious steps that have been properly assessed, evaluated even by the trainees in our courses for trainers. Of course, we have a lot of work to do in launching this technical strategy and start this project on a national football academy. As you are all able to notice here, all these rules on young players shape a domestic market of transfer for players. That we needed to have this intervention in place, and I thank you all of those who supported this initiative from the very beginning and those who have become supporters in the meantime of these rules. And even if you do not support these rules, for sure you'll definitely notice the results in terms of putting money to work. Without such quota, without the opportunity for a young player to be on the field, why would we have to invest in football academies? Why should we invest anymore in competitions for juniors and for children? Or why should we invest in trainers? Of course we wouldn't. Why would we need to invest in infrastructure anymore? This is why another important issue is the one related to the classification of football academies. This procedure of licensing all football academies contributes in parallel to all the interventions that we need to put in place in terms of competition, selection, trainership, and of course infrastructure. Lately we were able to convince the people in FIFA to support us in order to create an international benchmarking exercise, so that those who wish to attain performance and those who really deserve to be congratulated, because compared to 2014 today we have a lot higher number of suppliers in terms of national teams. We have a far higher number of football academies that have taken upon themselves this role of upbringing new children and football junior players. So we have this exercise of creating an international benchmarking so that we can compare ourselves with the best and to become the best. By the end of this research that we have undertaken, and we have chosen elected a number of clubs that you represent here, we'll identify the areas where we need to push forward, the areas where we need to invest more, because by the end of the day what we all wish to have into place is to have a contribution to a proper development of Romanian football, and this means direct involvement in developing the clubs themselves, because only by developing the clubs we can have an increased value of players for the clubs as well as for the national teams. At the same time, I have to be enthusiastic about our presence in the Olympic Games. I have to manifest my enthusiasm because after more than half a century, the Romanian football comes back to the Olympic Games after an extraordinary campaign organized in 2019, after having succeeded as European semi-finalists. In terms of the national team, senior national team, we have only 2 steps until the European Championship. Next week we have the most important step that we need to take in Iceland, and in the League of Nations we are still have not been beaten since this competition has been initiated. This is why we are glad that Cospin Contra and Mirel Rădoi have managed to contribute to this level of performance that we are currently recording. I think we can all agree that today we are on the right pathway and we need to continue investing. We need to believe in this pathway so that we should be able to record proper performance in terms of Romanian football. When we are talking about national teams, we are talking about platforms for promotion in terms of the possibility to, of course, to promote the best Romanian players, our best products, the best products of your daily work. But for this, we need to make more investments and to support this performance flow. In terms of organizing international tournaments, our presence in international tournaments, you know very well, in 2021 we'll not only be hosting 4 matches within Euro 2020, but we'll also be hosting the European Under-19 Championship. By the end of this year, in December, I hope that we'll be all sharing the joy of hosting in 2023 the European Championship for Youth. And this only represents a continuation of all this, of the entire mission that we have committed ourselves to starting from 2014, and a sign of encouragement that we need from the local and central authorities to continue investing in sports infrastructure. Well, all of these represent elements that we truly need in order to be able to exert our influence at a top level, at our national team level, in order to achieve performance. This is why you'll notice that new projects are prepared during the next month, especially in the educational area. I was telling you earlier that the National Football Academy has this objective to become the most important supplier for football education and training in Romania. We are glad that we have a top manager joining us, Mr. Burkel, who is joining our team, a graduate of Clairefontaine, and he is experienced in terms of the junior teams, and the academic manager of the academy teams in Romania, where he was able to develop a concept in terms of performance. And he will be the manager of the National Football Academy. At the beginning of my speech, I was referring to the meetings we had with each league, and you'll notice that some of the conclusions will be translated into reality. We needed to organize patterns for structural organization at club level. Another need that you brought forward, the need to identify a profile of the Romanian player, and this should result into a technical strategy. And you also expressed the need to have training cycles for various categories, and this will become true once the technical strategy is launched. And it will be the strategy will be described briefly by my colleague Mihai Stoichițe, who is coordinating the draft document. The technical strategy that Mihai will be immediately presenting to you, and I think this should be a landmark for further development of all Romanian football clubs. And then I will introduce Mr. Lucian Burkel to join us here in order to introduce us with the strategic guidelines at the level of the National Football Academy. Mr. Stoichițe. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to see you again. Actually, we started yesterday. I will try to be as brief as possible to explain to you this new line of action, the technical strategy of the Romanian football strategy. I think this is a paramount aspect of our activity because this is our title, Romanian Football Federation. I'm honored to have take upon myself the responsibility to contribute to designing this technical strategy, and I think this is a consequence and a response to everything that you have been working for, more than myself personally. Throughout the past 6 years, we realized that there is this need in place. First of all, this is a response to the everyday activity that, together with my colleagues, we are undertaking. We cannot have football without the members of the federation, because this is where all the roots are placed. The players of our national team that we are proud of, competitions that bring supporters on the stadiums, and even during this unfortunate time, people are still paying a lot of attention to what their club are doing compared to any other thing, anything else. This is a reality that I see on an everyday basis, and I think this is extremely important for Romanian football. This means that we still receive proper attention from our citizens. This strategy represents the result of the meetings that we have had, in Cheile Grădiște on a weekly basis. Many of you have asked to send in the field, in the country, members of the technical committee in order to have exchange of experience, in order to receive new information. This strategy represents the very fruit of this cooperation, those who are working together, part of the same family. This is extremely interesting because this is a strategy which aims at a long-term period. Of course, unfortunately, we suffer the consequences of the period when football was not properly planned, because we are talking about planning. This is why we only have one player with an age ranging from 24 to 30 years ago. We have lost entire generations, but we are going to gain generations due to your work. This is your work to work and build up new players. Maybe the strategy has not been so well planned, but starting from now it will become a far more scientific-based strategy. We have teams that have qualified at various stages, European Championship, Junior Championship. Next year, as I told you during our Cheile Grădiște, this is a generation, and I think that we'll be able to win a medal in the Olympic Games. These are the fruits of all our work, which has been organized better throughout the past years compared to what happened before. 6 years in football is not so much. A child is to be brought up from the age of 6 up to 18. You can do the maths yourselves. This means that things have been speeding up, and tremendous effort that has been made by the Federation, especially starting from 2014. There is a technical component of the strategic plan for development of football in Romania, 2015-2020. We have been mentioning this, but now we are moving on to a new phase. We are trying to build up the process and a working plan so that we can achieve together. We have our commitment is to have to score quite a number of goals by the end of the game, so to speak. But we know that we can do this, and we wish to do this. My activity translates into an ongoing flow and exchange of information and knowledge with you, and the technical strategy will reflect precisely this manner of work. And all the people in the Federation will have to take into account the same working. The Romanian Federation will not be designing a handbook which comes from top to bottom as a mandatory requirement. I was talking with our president a little bit earlier. Within this strategy, probably the most important word was adaptability. Adaptability, which represents a feature. I'm probably the most senior person in this meeting. I can tell you that I have worked with a lot of generations, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000. You have only read about them in books, or maybe you have seen them in video materials about football. The Romanian footballer in the most difficult times, and the Romanian football society has always been able to adapt itself. The long-term strategy should be properly understood. We need to live the present as well, because without present, we don't have a future. We have to adapt ourselves to the lack of infrastructure due to various reasons why we are here in this situation. We have to adapt to maybe some lack of proper knowledge of some personalities of football who should have a far better, more applied approach to football. But we have to speculate, we have to use your talent, the fact that the Romanian is always far more adaptable, inventive, innovative, and even creative. What we can achieve in the future. This is the very core of our strategy. Current situation, the lack of resources or infrastructure, okay, has to be compensated with your ability, with the ability of the trainers and the managers, because we are talking so many things. I was talking about with President Burleanu about so many things that we need to adjust to. We're talking about a technical strategy to train players that we need, to develop the clubs that you manage to increase and develop the football that we are working with. These are the broad lines of the dimensions, of the broad lines of the strategy, and these involve you directly. We need feedback from your side at any point of view. We'll be, of course, fine-tuning all the details so that we can provide a landmark that is endorsed through the experience gathered by all of you. We will not be working on a Bible, on football. No one has the courage, I think, to state that they know everything. No, this is just a free exchange of ideas in order to build a highly applied instrument, a very specific tool. This would be extremely important, so that our trainers could apply, by using this instrument, could apply their personality. You have to remember that no trainer acts and exactly like another one. I cannot make Dan Petrescu act the same way that Lucescu acts, just to provide an example. We have to provide a lot of attention to this, because the beauty of football is a result of a diversity of ideas from the same origin, the common body of education, which comes from football planning, the strategy of each club, designed with the help of the National Football Federation. These are the genuine goals of this strategy that we try to implement within 1 year, hopefully. But we need to live through this year as well. We cannot leave the reality aside. We cannot do this at all. We can never do this. The strategy is taking a huge step forward to our goals if we would like to become part of the European elite. Modern working instruments are supplementing or expanding the ability of the trainer. I was a trainer operating in an environment where these instruments were not available. We used to have subscriptions to magazines published abroad, Novoculture, for example. And then Romanian trainers started to have a modern approach. You know, Iorgulescu is here, and he is contemporaneous with me, and he used to be also a trainer for the national team. There was no information instrument, there was no education. That was only the Soviet system that we all knew. We need to run for 25-30 kilometers, and that was all, and all the other elements associated. But now it is extremely important to trade properly, to use absolutely all digital analysis tools in order to achieve, because they, of course, add to the work performed on the football field. Perspiring on the football field is a key element of our work. On each Sunday, we take an exam there on the football field, but at the same time, we need to stay connecting with the world so that we can improve our performance through all these digital means, digital instruments, however you want to call them. Concluding, the technical strategy will not represent an assurance for the fact that the Romanian team will be able to gain a Champions League within 5 years from now. No, this is not possible, and we will not have a Messi in each club within 10 years from now. There are no technical strategies anywhere in the world that could safeguard such an aim. If there had been such strategies in place, we could have copy-pasted and applied them. No. Why shouldn't we have a creative thinking in place? This is why you are here in football. This is why your trainers operate in this area, so that we can improve our activity in trainers. And Mr. Burkel will be explaining the role of the future National Football Academy within the Federation, so that your work could lead to more results. Because if you have good trainer, you have good players, you have a good team. If you do not have these elements, it's useless to have all this organizational exercise. This vision is translated into a coherent platform which will be able to build players adapted to the modern football and to our national specific. I underline this, our national specific, because we cannot copy-paste things from German football, from English football, but we could take some elements that could aid in our progress. Copy-pasting is not a solution. A student who is cheating will never end up a good doctor or a good engineer, whatever. But a student who knows how to pick up information, especially in such an environment when they have a national school for trainers, and due to this strategy that the Romanian Federation is designing, they will become far better trainers compared to me or to other trainers before us, because they have better conditions to train for. Thank you. Thank you, Mihai. Now we invite Mr. Lucian Burchel to take the floor. As mentioned earlier, he will be the manager of the National Football Academy, mentioned earlier in our meetings in Cheile Grădiște as well. Lucian. Good afternoon to all of you. I have prepared a speech that should be fluent enough and should reflect the realities that we are working with. Please allow me to add two more sentences after I finish the speech itself. What I can tell you from the very beginning is that we will be always available to you, that we are counting on your support. We will need your support, because this is the only way to go forward to work. In order to create a network, a football network, this is the only way to go forward. Dear members of the Romanian Football Federation, I can tell you that I'm proud to participate, to be part of this organization. This is the first General Assembly of the Federation when I'm member of this formidable team that I'm a part of, and we are all members of the same team. I have the genuine chance through the National Football Academy to translate for the benefit of the Romanian football, together with you and the new team that we are building with the academy, all my entire experience collected throughout the national teams at the club level. I have had the special pleasure to participate to European Championship organized in Romania in 2011. I have had 5 years in dealing with national teams, and all the knowledge I have collected as a professional player in Romania, abroad, as manager of the biggest football academy in Romania. I'm willing to share all this knowledge with you. I would like to thank President Răzvan Bulăreanu and the technical manager Mihai Stochiță for the trust manifested when they asked me to join them. And it's clear that for myself as well, this is the ideal project, and we will make it a success. I will continue to talk to you about the draft version of the technical strategy, because this represents a combination of two fundamental principles for myself: education on one side and performance on the other side. What will the technical strategy able to provide? The technical strategy, once it is drafted together, first of all, this will provide a game, a philosophy for playing, a concept of playing, adapted to the Romanian players' status. We'll be covering the defensive and offensive side, individual and collective side, starting from the youngest age, and providing a continuity in terms of training, a logic behind training, so that by the end we can reach a level of the game that we wish to have in place. All the details that you receive here are part of a project to develop the player from the technical, tactical, psychological, and especially behavioral side. In order to shape some part of the to explain the vision of the strategy, I will start from the words of a trainer. Many of us, the members of the so-called the generation Johan Cruyff, we still keep with us many of his achievements. These are the words that, for personally, they represent the very essence, the link between the game and the training period. We play the way we train the way we want to play. Mr. Stochiță was mentioning some moment Mr. Chibi Brown. He used the same words some time ago. Johan Cruyff, of course, is a point of reference, and the link between the training period and the game will have to become visible. Only when this happens, we'll be able to achieve the mind and physical intensity that we wish to have in place, as we see it in big competitions, in the Champions League, in Europa League as well, and so on. The strategy will also be providing structural and functional organization models for clubs and academies, solutions for developing scouting programs, as well as a unitary terminology. We have been talking about a unitary terminology for quite a while. Within the federal school, there are also some magazines covering terminological aspects. Will be strengthened from all points of view: technical, physical, psychological, behavioral point of view. Should use the same terms. We should be using a common language, otherwise we cannot understand each other unless we use common terms, and we'll be implementing this common terminology. Trust us. We need to have a unitary understanding, because we don't have only to use the same language, but we have to teach trainers by using clear concepts that they could be effectively passed on to the players. Based on this understanding, they should take proper decisions. They should not imitate situations, but they should understand football. I will go into details through three examples. The draft, I will provide examples on the draft version of the technical strategy. Our proposal is on playing style. You'll notice that in the offensive and defensive style, there are some very specific, clear issues that should be covered at all ages. Of course, adapting to the age in play, to the respective age of the player. Of course, we will be providing details in the future. But to have a more, also a very specific example. A second example, if you read carefully what was stated as a general principle in the first slide, in the second slide, in terms of here we specify some of the pieces of advice, some of the suggestions that we will be going into detail when licensing our trainers, and whether the improvement and educational activities undertaking in the country. And the last two slides, here, there you have just a small side of what we are working on currently. There you have a representation in parallel between what FIFA and UEFA suggests to have in terms of training. As you can see, there is a range between 5 to 19 years old where focus is placed on developing the talent of the player. Starting from the age of 19, the focus will be placed on high level of performance. We'll be observing these requirements from FIFA and UEFA, and we move on to the next slide, our proposal. Our proposal would be to have football taught according to a logic that covers the earliest age possible. As you can see, you have it's there phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Some of them are overlapping the training process, and the other phases deal with the entire performance achievement process. Our work is meant to submit a proposal to Romanian football, and we have a strong team. Probably we'll be expanding this team as well. But our wish is to bring forward something that can be embraced easily and enthusiastically, because starting from the administrative level, from Mr. Mostoichița, everyone stated that we wish this to have in practice. We have to deliver, and please trust us that we will reach this result. The draft technical project should be understood in the integrated context. Who is going to implement? It's the professionals from the federation, the professionals in the clubs that we will be training. This is why the National Football Academy represents a key pillar in fulfilling our objective. This project will be implemented starting from 2021, and it brings us back to our two key principles, education and training, because the academy becomes the most important creator and supplier of educational programs and services, specific educational services and programs for football in Romania, in order to increase performance. We will be building a team with specialized trainers on each type of license, who will be producing training and retraining programs. We will be introducing modern instruments for education. The program, the training schedule will be a unitary one. We will be creating courses that should cover all professional areas of football. The negative side and all the things which are still missing have been identified according to the needs discussed together with the management of the federation. Through the National Football Academy, the Romanian Football Federation will be delivering all educational programs dedicated to the current and to the future trainers who are football specialists and professionals. We will have a specialized training improvement program system. We'll not be limiting ourselves only to summoning the trainers to Bucharest and just ask them to watch a match or two, and then to ask them to attend a meeting with a foreign trainer who would be proposing ideas, their own philosophy or foreign philosophy. No, we'll be taking a different approach, and I think you'll be satisfied with this. I hope that you'll be satisfied with this new approach. The development of Romanian football translates, first of all, into the development of clubs, and this can be achieved only through genuine professionals. If our strategy means a philosophy of playing for the victory, as mentioned by Mr. Stochița earlier, the National Football Academy will become a solution for a modern club to become extremely competitive, truly competitive. Thank you for your attention. I hope we will be working very well together. Thank you very much, Mihai. Thank you, Lucian. I hope that our colleagues have been translating into reality what has been requested from your side during the previous meeting, so that this meeting, as we in 2015 during our General Assembly we adopted the first strategy for 2015-2020, and this was the moment. This is the moment when we start the engines of the National Football Academy. This would represent the added value that we need in our sport. Before concluding our meeting, I'd like to tell you a few pieces of information. Transparency. Transparency has always been an extremely important principle that we have been operating in the Romanian Football Federation. Even if you are very well aware of this, I will just to summarize once more the information from the financial side for the Federation. There are 4 key areas in the Romanian Football Federation where we invest. The resources that we are able to collect from the national side or from international sources as a result of selling TV rights or as a result of various funds received from UEFA or FIFA that the Romanian Football Federation gains access to, these funds are then reallocated to the 4 key lines of action, 4 areas of investments: national teams, competitions, development, and I will be explaining what we mean by this development component, and the infrastructure and support for the affiliated members. If we take a look at the national teams, today we are talking about 17 national teams, and next year we'll be starting this project of having an under-20 national team, so that we are able to improve even more the performance that we wish to achieve at the top level. Then the 17 national teams have received investments in 2019 of approximately 8.6 million euros. In terms of the competitions, Felix and myself, during our speeches, we mentioned a large number of competitions that we manage and currently develop in Romania, in terms of feminine football, male football, grassroots football, or futsal. We are talking about 36 competitions organized only for professional football. Throughout these 36 competitions, many of them are new ones who have been added on our list of activities starting from 2014. We are investing no less than 2.8 million euros. Another area which is extremely important is the development one. We were not able to identify any better word in Romanian, so this is why we are using the concept of development. We mentioned that this includes the grassroots, licensing, first, second, third league. We'll be able to also start licensing for female football. Then Federal School for Trainers, another component for our investments, the Central Board of Referees, social responsibility, good governance, and European projects. We are talking about investments amounting to 1.7 million euros. Also, other expenses that we have in our federation, our hotel, the 2 food facilities that we are working with, Buftea and Mogoșa, this amount of approximately 0.7 million euros spent. We are talking about jurisdictional boards which are paid by the federation, the board for auditors, the auditor boards, the retail and merchandising, which is also an area which brings revenues. I will remind you that by 2019 we had approximately 1 million euros revenues from this side, and also administrative expenses. We are not going beyond 2.24 million euros in terms of expenses. Also, as a result of the fact that we are hosting Euro 2020, we have additional expenses, of course, financed from funds coming from UEFA, and they are around 0.78 million. 780,000 euros. Coming back to the information presented by my colleagues from the financial side, if you take a look at the financial flow, we are talking about 8.6 million euros invested on an yearly basis in the national teams. This investment translates into 51% of all expenses of the National Football Federation. In terms of the competitions, the 2.5 to 2.8 million euros represent 17%. In terms of development, 1.7 million euros represent the equivalent of approximately 10%. The investments in infrastructure and support to the affiliating members represent 1.1 million euros, and these are translating to 7% of the budget. And we are talking about good governance. If we include also wage-related expenses, we are not going beyond 13%, as long as the benchmark at European level is 20%. Of course, the expenses associated with the 2020 Euro project, these amount to approximately 5%. If we take a look at the, have a broader view of the revenues, which are the sources of revenues for the Romanian Football Federation, we're talking about 55% of our revenues result from selling rights, either sponsorship or TV rights. We do not include this share of 55% does not include ticketing, ticket sales, which are which goes up to approximately 8%, and we do not include the retail component, which again will represent a new source of revenue that will be increasing year after year, especially that our team has been increasing. We have a top manager from Procter & Gamble who joined us and will take over the commercial and retail segment. When we had all this discussion in the public in terms of the UEFA and FIFA funds, we can see here exactly the percentage, which is the precise percentage from the total budget in terms of revenues. As we had this crisis, we have been confronted with this crisis situation, I have to mention that as regards the European institution, we didn't have any access to additional funds. Even if UEFA allowed us to allocate additional amounts, we thought that what it is paramount for us is to continue supporting all the projects, not to redirect amounts of money to other directions. Also, a few days ago, the Romanian Federation cashed in from FIFA and received from FIFA an additional fund compared to the normal amount received on a yearly basis. We're talking about 1 million euros, or 850,000 euros. As a result of the fact that by the end of 2019, we managed to have financial reserves amounting to approximately 20% of the total turnover, as a result of a very good reputation that we have and we have had in the business environment, we were able to receive a very important support from the sponsors, from our sponsors, and this also was cumulated with signing new sponsorship contracts, and during the next period we'll be able to have this joy to share with us, as we'll have new partners joining the Romanian Football Federation. If we summarize all this financial information, yesterday in our executive board we were able to approve and create a solidarity fund for the members affiliated to the Romanian Football Federation, amounting to approximately 1.7 million euros, and this money will be directed to the members of the federation starting from next week. We were able to create this solidarity fund, on one hand as a result of the fact that we had our interventions in terms of decreasing expenses, meaning that there have been months during which the employees of the federation had to deal with 20% cut in their expenses. We had We have also had restructuring at the federation level, but taking into account the mission that we commit ourselves on an ongoing basis, that from the financial point of view we should operate with this level of stability that could provide you with far more trust in terms of the projects that the federation is able to commit itself to. We have now the opportunity now to create the solidarity fund that should be addressed, will be addressed to you starting from next week. And if this crisis will continue, we are prepared to organize a new intervention before the championship resumes in the second phase, so that we can cover the expenses that might be incurred during this pandemic situation, because as my colleagues from the financial department have been presenting to you, even if we are confronted with the biggest crisis that football has been confronted ever, I am still able to assure you the financial stability of the Federation, Romanian Football Federation, of our capacity to continue all the investments already initiated, as well as new investments. We will not stop any of the investments already initiated. If in 2019, for example, we were able to inaugurate two football fields with artificial fields, in 2020 we are able to inaugurate 5 football arenas from a broader project which was started in 2018. As well as from the technical side, our investments will be increased in terms of national teams. In new competitions will emerge no matter if the crisis will continue. I wanted to use this opportunity of the General Assembly to underline once more this mission that I undertook together with my colleagues starting from 2014, to have a transparent manner and a transparent approach in all our activities undertaken at federation level. Now I'd like to introduce you to one more project, because I was talking to you about the investments made. As mentioned earlier, this crisis brought us closer to new technologies. If before this crisis I wanted to place a focus on digitalization, not even at the domestic level in our management, I could have identified enough support. Now we can see that new investments will be organized by the Federation on this digitalization component that we truly need. By the end of this month, by the beginning of next month, we'll be ready to launch what we call an interactive map of Romanian football. This is a map where we wish each Romanian club which operates in the field of football, no matter the level of competition, grassroots, professional football, should be part of this map. This map is aimed to inform us better on all the representatives of football clubs in Romania. This will be the largest effort for digitalization within Romanian sports. This mission that we undertake through this digitalization process is to initiate and train and build up the biggest digital platform for football. This will allow us, on one hand, to know better the people who are working on a daily basis. I'm talking about the members who are included in the county football associations, or even the clubs who are not even now affiliated with the federation or with the county football associations. And the new objective that we'll be committing ourselves to during the next next years, not only to know each other but to support each other. Because I was telling you, the football at grassroots level needs more than ever during this time of crisis all our assistance and all the support from the authorities. This is why we truly believe, we truly trust this process of digitalization, and I will ask each of you to support us in our exercise to fill in this database, and its objective is rather simple. I think all of you have received questions such as this. I have a 7-year child. What club should I direct him to? I like any mother or any father in Romania to be able to have access to a digital platform where they should find all information about any Romanian football club, no matter the age category where they operate. That being said, this is an example of a new investment project organized at the federation level. And to conclude our General Assembly, I will have to read, and please follow me through, the decision of the General Ordinary Assembly of the Romanian General Football Federation, organized on 2nd of October. The General Assembly of the Federation assembled convened on 2nd of October, 1100 hours, National Arena in Bucharest, Basarabi Boulevard, 2nd District of Bucharest, decides as follows. Finds that the quorum, according to the statute, Article 36 of the Articles of Association of the Federation, is lawfully complied with. The second point, then following persons will operate as evaluators: Kishore for the left side, Lala Viorel for center, and for the right side. Third point on the agenda, approval of the following persons for drafting the report of the Assembly. Fourth item takes notice of the speech delivered by Mr. Răzvan Buleanu. Number 5 approves the agenda. Number 6, sixth item, approval of the affiliation of the clubs according to the report drafted by the Department for Licensing and Affiliation. Part of the documents already sent to the members. Seventh item approves the disaffiliation and final disaffiliation, loss of quality for the clubs presented as such. Eighth item approves the nominal list, 283 members of the Romanian Football Federation as a result of affiliation and disaffiliation. Approved. This is the highest number of members, affiliated members, throughout the recent history. Number 9 approves the report on the current activity, and number 10, approval of the balance sheet for 2019 and the discharge of duties for the Executive Board. Number 11, approval of the activity report and the balance sheet for the National Center, Mogoșa. Approval of 12, approval of the balance sheet of and the activity report for the Foundation Fotbal for Community, approval of the activity report and balance sheet for the National Academy, approves the internal audit report, takes notice of the external audit report, approves the budget for the 2020-2021 budget, and the last item, approval of the decision of the General Assembly of the National Federation. I will ask you to cast your vote. The last voting process. You have a unanimous decision on this item as well. Thank you very much. Throughout the next period, as we did so far, my message is the same. Please stay cautious, stay healthy, so that we can see each other, especially in the country, when we'll be able to pay visits. As regards some organizational issues, I was informed to pass on that the exit this time will be made through this area, so you'll have to step down, and then you can see this red line, and this will guide us outside the stadium in order to comply the medical protocols for this event. Also, from organizational point of view, you need any further stamps on your delegation. The lunch will be served in Ring Hotel. Thank you very much for answering to our invitation during this pandemic situation, during this crisis situation, and that you have attended the General Assembly of the Romanian Football Federation. Thank you very much.